What if the secret to career advancement isn't always moving up? Today we're challenging conventional wisdom about career growth with Brian Elliott. He's a former executive at both Google and Slack. Drawing from his extensive experience in high tech, Brian reveals how strategic lateral moves can help you re-engage, increase your skill sets, and expand your professional network and future opportunities. In this interview, he shares practical insights on transforming what others might see as just sideways steps into powerful career catalysts. Be sure to stay tuned to the end of the video, where Brian shares some personal anecdotes about his own sideways steps along his career path and the big impact that they made. Brian, so nice to have you here. I love the phrase that careers are a jungle gym, not a ladder. Tell us where that phrase came from.
Yeah.
Tell us, the derivation.
If you've heard the phrase before, and a lot of people haven't, you probably attribute it to Sheryl Sandberg, because in her book, Lean In, she talks about careers are a jungle gym, not a ladder. But there's actually a woman named Patty Sellers, who was the person who first coined that phrase a few years before Sheryl and gave it to her. So credit where credit is due. But the way to think about this is, we usually think about careers as being a ladder. The way in which you progress is always by a lateral movement up the chain, right? And you think about it from a functional perspective. You start off as a junior salesperson, you become a senior salesperson, you become a senior manager. A jungle gym is more appropriate because it's actually what happens to all of us more often. And I think a better path in a lot of ways. A jungle gym says it's not always up. Sometimes you're going sideways, right? Sometimes you may even move down a step or a half a step in order to move back up again. And what you're doing that for is to develop additional skills, capabilities, to learn, and sometimes just to put yourself in a different situation to sort of refresh yourself.
So let's talk about bias. People sometimes have internal biases that they feel like it's not what I should be doing with my career, or they're anticipating that a hiring manager might have a bias looking at the resume and seeing that they didn't continue this trajectory up. What do you say to that?
Those biases can be real, and there's one core element to it that I think people rightfully should be concerned about, which is when you're making a lateral move, especially when you're making a move that involves moving from one function to another, it may slow your rate of promotion. In fact, it almost always does. Because think about it this way, not only are you changing contexts, meaning you may be in a different business unit, but more importantly, you're changing the skill sets that are required. You're kind of leaving behind a known set of relationships and context and skills, and you're developing new ones. That almost by definition is going to mean your time to progress back up the ladder from one level to the next is going to slow down. But what you're doing is you're taking a short-term hit for long-term gains. Hiring managers can also have that bias. I think it's more unfortunate in that case, right? Because if you're a hiring manager and you're saying, I don't get it, why aren't you straight off linear going up the chain? The answer might be often outside that person's control. Their organization slowed down the promotions calendar. But the other thing is you're not giving value to the range of experience that someone has, which speaks probably to their adaptability, their resilience in change, and their willingness to learn, which honestly, as a hiring manager, is something I'd be much more concerned about than did you check a series of boxes about time and place progression.
So Brian, if someone gets over that internal bias and they think, okay, maybe it's time for a move, maybe it's time for a move sideways in my company, what would be the triggers for that kind of conversation with themselves?
The triggers for the move, there's many that can happen. One thing that's happening right now is the job market is slowing down, right? The job market of 2020, 2021, 2022, to some degree, was high growth. And it was very easy to get promoted, relatively speaking. It was easy to jump around and find additional jobs. That has slowed down dramatically. It may be that the team you're on is simply one that you've grown tired of. And it's not to say that the situation you're in is bad, or you don't like your manager, or you don't like your teammates, but it's the grind. I'm feeling the same problems week on week. I'm with the same people week on week. It's getting old. And I can feel my energy dissipating, right? And a way to revive that drive and energy is often to put yourself in a new situation, to find new problems to work on, to find new people to get to meet. But again, that can be challenging, but it can also be reviving. The other big one, and this has been a big one in my career, is stagnation. I feel like the learning curve is slowing down, right? I don't feel like I am being exposed to the same level of new problems, new challenges that I was before. And Therefore, it might be time to make a change simply because if you want to stay on that learning curve, which I think is essential for long-term success, it might be time to make a switch.
You talked in your article about the importance of people who act as allies or as sponsors for when you want to make a move in the company. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the allies are the people that you might know in other parts of the organization, right? It's the folks that will help give you insight into what it's like working in that business unit or in this function, that will help you understand what about your background, your skills, your capabilities might be a good fit, and where you might have some gaps that you want to close. Your allies are also really helpful in a very tactical sense. They're the ones that can point to something and say, hey, Brian, I don't know if you know it, but this job just opened up on our team over here. You might be a great fit for it. I know you've been looking to make a change. Why don't you toss your hat in the ring? And so that's where allies can be really helpful. Sponsors are critical. And I have been the beneficiary of some great sponsors over the course of my career and have tried and turned to be a sponsor. We all know what a mentor is, or conceptually what a mentor is. A mentor helps coach you along the way from a skills perspective. A sponsor takes it a step further. They're your advocate. It's someone who sits there and says, I've gotten to know you and I want to help you further your career. So I'm going to keep my eyes open as a more senior person for opportunities where you might be a good fit. I might talk to senior leaders in that part of the organization to give them a sense of who you are, to say, hey, you ought to take a look at Brian for this one because I think this is the kind of opportunity that he would really rise to. And so there's a really key role for sponsorship on that.
So you talked a little bit about the sponsorships that you've had in the past. Tell us about your own experience moving sideways throughout your career.
My entire career has basically been a jungle gym, right? I was a consultant early in my career. I got tired of consulting because I felt like I didn't have my hands on something. I wasn't building anything, and I wasn't working with and developing and being developed by a consistent team of people. So I jumped into startups. And I learned the hard way that I didn't know nearly as much as I thought I did. But I also put myself in a situation that was very intentional. I went from startups to Google. I took a job at Google that I literally could have done 10 years earlier in my career, okay? But what it gave me was the opportunity to go from an organization that I was leading that was 300 people to working in a 50,000 person organization that became a 125,000 person organization. How do you operate at that scale? How do you build teams successfully at that scale? Which gave me a different set of skill sets. So sometimes, again, this is one where I definitely went sort of backwards from a career perspective to move further up.
That's so great. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thanks, Leslie. It's been great chatting with you.
We hope you found Brian's insights valuable. For a deeper dive into this strategy, check out his column, When Moving Sideways Makes Sense, on MIT Sloan Management Review's website. The link is in the description below. You'll find detailed frameworks and real-world examples to help you evaluate your next career move. Want additional perspectives from our authors? Explore our curated playlist of interviews. Thanks for watching.